Welcome to this explainer. Today, we are bringing incredible energy to a topic of massive scale, a conflict that has absolutely shaken global politics and economies to their core. We are, of course, talking about the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Now, we all know the sheer magnitude of this is immense. It's easily one of the most significant geopolitical shifts of our modern era. But to truly grasp it, we can't just skim the headlines, right? We need to dig into the foundations. So, let's break down the timeline, the different perspectives, and the massive global fallout of this historic crisis.
So how did two neighbors become enemies? Seriously, think about that for a second. We're talking about two countries that not too long ago were actually part of the exact same nation. They share borders, they share deep history, and yet today they are locked in the fiercest of conflicts, a war that has disrupted the entire world order. Why did this happen? How did that shared history just fracture so completely?
Okay, let's dive into this. Part 1, Dissolution of the Soviet Union, the 1991 breakup.
Let's lay out a quick chronological roadmap so we have a clear mental model of how this escalated. The seeds were planted back in 1991 with the breakup of the USSR. We then take a massive leap to 2014 with the control of Crimea, which eventually culminates in the Great War of 2022. So as you can see, this definitely wasn't an overnight explosion. It was a decades-long buildup.
Starting right at the beginning of our timeline, 1991, Ukraine, previously part of the Soviet Union, becomes an independent nation. And naturally, with independence comes choices about your future direction. As a newly sovereign country, Ukraine slowly started strengthening its ties with Europe and Western nations. And honestly, it's right here in these post-1991 years where the initial differences between the two nations slowly started to emerge.
Part 2, NATO and rising tensions, security versus sovereignty. Now, if we look at the root of these rising tensions, it really boils down to two entirely opposing strategic goals. Let's look at this impartially. On one hand, Russia feared that Ukraine moving closer to the Western military alliance, NATO, would be a direct threat to its own national security. On the other hand, you have Ukraine simply wanting to increase its cooperation with Western countries to secure its own future and sovereignty. It's like two nations looking at the exact same geopolitical map but seeing totally different requirements for their safety.
Moving to Part 3, 2014, Control of Crimea, the first major escalation.
Fast forward to 2014, and geopolitical tension turned into physical action. Russia officially took control of the Crimea region in Ukraine. This was a pivotal moment where theoretical debates suddenly became a very physical reality.
And the immediate fallout was absolutely tragic. Conflict erupted almost instantly in eastern Ukraine. This wasn't just a brief skirmish. It sparked years, literally years, of continuous fighting. Thousands of lives were lost. So the region was already deeply scarred, long before the events dominating today's headlines.
Which brings us to Part 4, the Great War of 2022. The world is shocked.
February 24th, 2022. That specific date, that was the day that shocked the world. That is when Russia launched a massive, large-scale military assault on Ukraine.
The events that followed were pure chaos. Missiles firing, tanks advancing, entirely peaceful cities suddenly engulfed in war. But the Ukrainian resistance was incredibly stiff and fierce, and the international response was immediate. We saw massive global support for Ukraine, paired with severe, sweeping economic sanctions slapped on Russia. The whole geopolitical landscape shifted overnight.
Part 5, Global Impact and Consequences, how this affects you.
First, we absolutely have to acknowledge the immense humanitarian toll here. Millions of innocent people were forced to leave their homes, families completely torn apart. And tragically, thousands of soldiers and civilians have been killed or injured. The human suffering is undeniably the most profound consequence of this war.
So the crucial point is how this reaches across borders and directly impacts your everyday life, specifically by sending the global prices of energy and food absolutely skyrocketing. Because think about it, Russia and Ukraine are massive global suppliers of natural gas, oil, wheat, and grain. When the world's breadbasket and a giant energy supplier go to war, global supply chains choke. We're talking higher costs to heat your home, way higher prices to fill up your car, and surging grocery bills. This localized conflict literally destabilized global food security and energy markets, forcing everyday citizens everywhere to bear that economic burden. To wrap our heads around this, we have to recognize that this is not just a localized border dispute. It's a highly complex web. You've got national security fears tangled with shifting politics, centuries of history, and very delicate international relations. You can't just isolate one piece of the puzzle. The whole shebang is happening all at the exact same time. Which leaves us with a final, lingering question. Will lasting peace ever be established for these innocent lives? Today, the world watches, waits, and hopes for relief. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep this context in your back pocket as you follow the news, and always keep asking questions.